Hi Year 13, welcome to this lecture on the functionalist view of crime and deviance. So when we think about functionalist theories, there are a few that you need to consider. For some reason this box has gone blank for you, so I'll just tell you what to fill in. In the very top box you've got Durkheim, who was around 1858 to 1917. Probably the most famous functionalist we look at. The gentleman on the left with the glasses, that's Robert Merton, who was around 1910 to 2003. In the green box on the right, we've got subcultural theories, which sort of fit within functionalism because they still recognise that crime and deviance takes place because of a different set of norms and values. And if you think about it, that's a key functionalist idea about the roles of norms and values and teaching us how to behave. And then we've got three different subcultural theorists that we're going to be looking at. A gentleman on the left looking really happy with glasses, that's Albert Cohen. Then we're going to be looking at Cloward and Olin, that's spelled C-L-O-W-A-R-D, and Olin, O-H-L-I-N. And finally, the right-hand box would have been Walter B. Miller, 1920 to 2004. Now, the happy guy down on the right, down there, is a gentleman called David Matza, spelled M-A-T-Z-A, and we're going to use him to criticise subcultural theories of crime and deviance. So, Emile Durkheim, he argued that norms and customs and laws define acceptable behaviour, and they have coercive power over people, in the sense that we tend to behave not because we're being forced to by the police, but because we have norms and values inside us that kind of coerce us to behave in a particular way. If we don't behave in a particular way, obviously agents of social control will kick in. The rules of conformist behaviour are passed on from one generation to the next by agents of socialisation. So, for example, the family, education, and media. And values become internalised in every individual's mind as the collective conscience, the collective idea of what's right and wrong. This agreement about norms and values is a consensus, because remember, functionalists believe that society is based on agreement about shared norms and values. And because we all share the same goals, the same values, the same norms, this creates social order and social stability, functionalists' favourite thing. When we deviate or commit crime, so if we deviate from the norms and values, and this sometimes can manifest as crime, our behaviour will attract a range of negative sanctions from what I mentioned, the agents of social control. From the one end, from your friends just not hanging out with you because you're being a bit weird, to the police actually arresting you and you losing your freedom. Okay, so very formal social control. So Durkheim argued that deviance and crime, if you like, are functional. And one of the things that he said is that deviance is inevitable. Even in a society of saints, there would still be deviance. So why, if there were only saints, in a sense, everybody behaved impeccably, why would there still be deviance, so wrongdoing? If you can annotate that on your PowerPoint, that'd be great. Well, Durkheim argued that if we did have a perfect society of saints, of exemplary individuals, crimes will be unknown, but faults which appear venial to us, like excusable, okay, to the layman, the normal person, us, will create the same scandal that an ordinary offence does in ordinary consciousness. So, because of the standards being so high for behaviour in the society of saints, whatever's expected normal, the tiniest slip-up would be seen as deviant. So in our society, not holding the door open for someone who's behind you is kind of seen as normal, if you like. But if everybody behaved like a saint every day, someone maybe not holding the door open for someone would equate to a criminal offence because it would be so abnormal. What he's basically saying is deviance is relative. In one society, certain types of behaviours might seem moderate and normal, okay, so bearing your shoulders, but in a different society, such as, Saudi Arabia, bearing your shoulders, showing your hair, would be seen as deviant/criminal. So deviance is certainly relative to the society that you're in. So here's a quick example just to illustrate it in an educational setting. In All Saints School, everybody does their homework on time. So handing it in late is very much seen as deviant. And you've got a little example down there, like who's done the homework? Well, she has. She's definitely done it, and so is the little boy behind her. And then we have a typical homework excuse, possibly. I couldn't do my homework because the computer had a virus, so do all my pens and pencils. However, because in that school, the norm is for everyone to do their homework, this child is seen as an exceptionally deviant one and therefore receives 1,000 hours detention, and they contact an educational psychologist to see what's wrong with you. That's what's seen as extremely deviant. Now, we could say in your average school, I'm not saying Heathfield, but maybe a school where doing homework is actually something that just the geeks do, someone not doing their homework would be seen as normal, and maybe they wouldn't be punished as harshly, and the rest of the students wouldn't look at them and think, oh wow, you horrible deviant for not doing your homework. In fact, maybe not doing your homework would be seen as cool. So that kind of links to sort of anti-school subcultures that you guys know about from before as well. Durkheim also argued that crime performs positive functions for society. So for him, punishments like public hangings also performed a positive function. Can you explain or annotate what positive function would public displays of punishment have for the rest of society? He also argued that crime is functional and beneficial for society because it enables change to occur. So how can crime or deviance lead to social change? Well, and this is a quote from Durkheim, for change to occur, yesterday's deviance must become today's normality. And the example is not Jesus from Durkheim, that's my example. So can you ever think, in what way was Jesus once considered deviant or criminal, and how has he now become seen as normal? Okay, so think about Jesus, think about the history, think about the stories. Was he ever viewed as a deviant or criminal? And how is he now actually not only normal, his behaviour is actually seen as something we should all aspire to, almost. Thinking about more recent social change, what can you think about these different cases, and can you annotate on your PowerPoint what beneficial social change from these examples of what was considered crime and deviance? So you've got the suffragette movement, who were famous for fighting for equal rights for women, in that they were seen as criminals, they were seen as mentally ill, their ideas were seen as completely deviant for the society at the time. So, how do they kind of create positive social change? You've got Rosa Parks, who refused to give up the seat to a white man on a US bus, and that was definitely seen as deviant. And it wasn't necessarily criminal, but it was definitely the norm for blacks to sit at the back of the bus, if you like. So, think about her behaviour was deviant, it was almost criminal, but what actually happened as a result of her deviance and the movement around her? Nelson Mandela was opposed to apartheid, the separation of black people and white people in South Africa. And Martin Luther King, he was the leader of the civil rights movement in America. So please annotate what beneficial, and we can really say this is beneficial, social change have come from these different examples of crime and deviance. Okay, so remember, Nelson Mandela went to jail, and Martin Luther King was seen as deviant. He didn't ever actually go to jail. Finally, Durkheim talks about crime as a result of social change. So he's not all positive about crime, but he does say that crime can be symptomatic of social change or people not being sure of the rules. So in times of social change, individuals can become unsure of prevailing norms and values and rules. So as a result, they might be at more risk of breaking them. And actually, they might not care about breaking them because they might have a more shallow attachment to their local area. So this can happen when people move house to new areas. They might not feel attached to the community, so they might not mind vandalism or antisocial behaviour. So that's actually very typical in inner cities because, you've got quite a lot of population movement in inner cities, particularly London. So because of this kind of weaker collective conscious, because there's been social change, we get something called anomie. So this is a key term this year that we must all understand. And anomie, if you like, is the definition in the box on the left, when there has been a collapse of the collective consciousness and people start to act in their own self-interest because they aren't sure about the shared norms and values around them, or they don't feel that they can relate to the shared norms and values around them. So he saw enemy not just as expressed through crime, but also through suicide and marital breakdown and even industrial disputes like, strike actions and what have you. So this is quite important, and generally it's part of the organic analogy, if you remember that. And, if a part of society becomes sick, aka we get more crime, then that means something's wrong with society and we need something to change in order to correct it. Okay, so sometimes crime can be the result of social change, but also crime can sometimes cause social change as well. So, in terms of criticisms of Durkheim's theory of crime and deviance, what can you make? Well, I've given you 4 there, so have a read through them. He ignores white-collar crime. He ignores the role of social structures like poverty and low education achievement in creating crime. He ignores the fact that for some particular groups, deviant groups, going to jail is a status symbol and not a punishment. So going to jail is seen as cool. It kind of gives them more status within their deviant subculture. And actually, despite what he says, some crimes have a very negative effect on society, no matter how you look at them. So can you think of any examples of crimes that have had enormously a negative effect on society? Thank you for listening, Year 13. The next lecture, we'll be looking at subcultural explanations of crime and deviance and evaluating them. Thank you.